this is Nate Wells. And this is Drew Cove. Check out our podcast, that Gopher Hockey Podcast, for the latest news and updates on University of Minnesota hockey. You can find us on iTunes, and we're also on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
That's elite.
The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get stinko.
Welcome, Giles and the Goalie Podcast. I am Giles Farrell. Across the table for me is Ben Remington.
Hello.
Back in studio this week after my small vacation last week out of town. Ben, baseball season is upon us, as I'm attired for here today. Do you have any scathing baseball takes as we open the regular season this week?
I actually was just thinking about this yesterday. It's going to be really funny to watch the I don't know how to put them, but the certain type of Twins fans that would do nothing but complain about Mauer and his contract. It's going to be like they're put in a round room and told to crap in the corner. They're not going to know what to do. They're just going to be running around frantically trying to find something to bitch about. And, I mean, granted, there's possibly things they can find to complain about, like anything involving Miguel Sano or anything involving probably the pitching staff. But it's going to be interesting to see what those people move on from after literally years of whining about Joe Mauer. I'm so excited to see what they come up with.
They'll move on to complaining about Byron Buxton.
Yeah, even though he doesn't have a big contract at all. And I mean,
No.
he just because he hasn't lived up to the hype.
I don't know how to feel about the Twins this season. I can't process Joe Mauer-less Twins.
It's true.
And
I hear you.
If you want our actual predictions on the baseball season, we did join our friend Panda Pete's Twins podcast and gave our scathing takes on what we think will happen. And I ended up shooting my predictions from the hip, didn't offer any kind of research into them whatsoever. Although the one where I did fit into the crowd with was Nelson Cruz for most home runs.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a safe bet.
Which in hindsight, I regret.
Oh, should have gone more bold.
Yeah, I should have picked like Max Kepler or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that was the Twins and Losses podcast. If you find that, I think he's on every major podcast channel like we are. So
yeah,
check it out.
That's weird to think baseball is starting in March, and weirder to think that the Twins will start the season here in March at home.
Baseball in March in Minnesota, gotta love it.
Yeah.
Just how God intended.
Yeah, out in the elements. Deal with it. Nothing worse than trying to hit a baseball in 33-degree weather.
Oh man, I've played some softball games and some baseball games have been mighty chilly, but nothing like that.
Also, how is your tournament bracket? Not the infuriation tournament bracket. We're coming back to that.
The actual bracket. I think my bracket is trash. I haven't really looked since Friday night, but I'm terrified to look. I think so. I had two brackets, two different work brackets, and I think in one of them I had Kansas State in the Final Four, and they lost in the first round. So I'm off to a good start with that one. And the other one I think was probably just as bad.
So I hit 24 out of 32 in the first round.
Nice.
But the second round has been less than stellar so far. I'm just at I think I just got 5 picks correct here in the second round. Oof. And one of them was Michigan State, who just took a big dump on the University of Minnesota.
They sure did.
But hey, at least they won a round. That's good for them. It's weird to think that the Final Four will be here in 2 weeks, and I don't really think we hear about it.
Not really, no.
For months and months leading up to the Super Bowl,
Oh my God.
you heard about it.
That's all it was.
You don't hear anything about the Final Four being here, which, you know, it hasn't been in how many years? 20 years? Something like that, yeah. was like
2003.
I think it was like
no, it was like
2000,
2001.
2001, yeah, in the Metrodome. Duke's also won every Final Four that's been in Minneapolis. So there's
there
some
you go.
quick facts for you. That's why I picked Duke to win. That was my only reason for picking Duke is they win every year the Final Fours here.
And they have hometown boy Trey Jones.
Yeah,
Brother
the
of Tyus.
pipeline to Duke from Minneapolis.
From Apple Valley.
As
doesn't make
our
a lot
friend
of sense, but
Derek Peterson pointed out yesterday during the Gophers game, Michigan State has the previous year's Mr. Basketball from the state of Michigan on their team, which he thought was cool. And then he said, all of Minnesota's Mr. Basketball, just go to Duke.
pretty much.
So I said, maybe we should just move Duke here.
Yeah.
No, they win too much.
Yeah.
That would be upsetting to the culture here.
Right. Mike Krzyzewski would retire.
He can't deal with it.
No.
Speaking of can't dealing with it, the Minnesota Wild continue to make no sense, and I just can't put up with it anymore. There's a countdown in my home, not started by me, till the Wild season gracefully comes to an end.
I'm shocked my wife hasn't done the same thing.
Well, which if the Wild can get in the playoffs will have to be extended, but I keep
God.
saying with the way they go, it's not going to happen. But just to review the weird week that was, after losing to the New York Islanders last Sunday, 3-2 in overtime, the Wild finished their homestand Tuesday against Colorado Avalanche. They lose 3-1 at XL Energy Center. The Wild close out a 5-game homestand in St. Paul with 1 win, 3 losses, and an overtime loss.
Sounds about right.
3 points out of 10 at home, and when in a time in which you need at least 6 or 7. Then the Wild had a couple of days off, and then they headed out to the nation's capital to take on the defending champs, the Capitals. That's still really fun to say. And because, again, the Wild make no sense, they win 2-1. Thank you to goals from Jordan Greenway had the winner, which was a very lovely goal. Or no,
he had the
didn't.
first goal.
He had the opening goal,
Cunnin
which
had the winner.
still very lovely. Luke Cunnin with the winner. And Wild held Alex Ovechkin off the score sheet. After I pointed out pregame, his
happen.
points per game average against the Wild was the highest of any team in the National Hockey League.
Miracles happen every day.
And then the Wild followed up in Carolina the next night, Saturday night, with an absolute trash game, as we saw like against Florida after their big win against Tampa Bay a couple weeks ago. 5-1, the Hurricanes win in the Nito Niederreiter reunion game. No points for Niederreiter in his first game against the Wild, but the Canes spared no goals in this one.
Did Victor Rask get any points in his revenge game?
No.
No, he didn't. Okay. Just checking.
I also didn't really notice him.
That's a good night for him.
Yeah. But, and then the Canes did their usual fun post-game party in which they played some basketball for March Madness. Trevor Van Riemsdyk gets away with some double dribbling, some traveling on his way to the hole.
So it's
but
an
he
NBA.
does, yeah.
cosplay
He does dunk at the end there, which I don't know. It's a unique thing still, so don't at me about it. But
Well, and you know, that's talk about Duke. That's Duke territory right there. Raleigh, North Carolina. That's very much Duke territory.
Yeah.
So very big deal to them.
I think it's like UNC Greensboro plays their home games at PNC Arena.
No kidding.
I think so, yeah. Because
Really?
if you look in the rafters, if they ever pan into the rafters, you see a bunch of college hoops banners, and I'm pretty sure that's for UNC Greensboro. I have
Greensboro. Wow. Okay.
to double check that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's pretty sure that's where they play.
Yeah, and I know
Or
Duke.
somebody of note plays there.
Um,
No, it's not UNC Greensboro. I apologize.
Wilmington.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, because Duke I know is just down the road from Raleigh. It's not in Raleigh, but it's just outside of Raleigh.
Tenants, I apologize. North Carolina State.
Oh, NC State. Wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Anyway, back to the
Back to hockey
problems. Yeah, the Wild now suddenly, well, they were leapfrogged this last week by not only Arizona, But the Colorado Avalanche snuck their way right back into the playoffs. And they, as we record here Sunday morning, hold the final wildcard spot in the Western Conference. 80 points for Colorado in 75 games. They have a game in hand on the Wild, who have 79 points in 76 games. Arizona, 75 games, 79 points.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your standing where the Wild are at here as we record. And the big thing here is going down the stretch is the schedule, which I wrote about on Friday afternoon for Zone Coverage, that the Wild do not have a good schedule to end the year. And really, since calendar flipped to March, the Wild haven't had a good schedule at all. I think they have like the highest points percentage of teams they're going to play again for remaining against, comparative to everyone else that they're playing with.
Right.
And when I wrote on Friday, that included the Capitals and the Hurricanes. The Wild had played their last game against a team not in the playoffs, which was Colorado. And technically at that time on Tuesday, the Avs were not in a playoff spot. So if you want to actually be technical about the last team in the playoff chase that the Wild played, that was on March 16th against the New York Rangers, which they took care of business. They won that game. Right. But moving forward now, they have home against the Predators. Then they have a few days off in which they travel to a certain city in Nevada. They play the Golden Knights. And then 2 nights later, they play the Coyotes, who are right there with the Wild for a playoff spot. And then you have the Jets, the Bruins, both at home to end the home schedule for the year. And then you finish the season at Dallas. Oof. Not a good schedule if you're, a Wild fan. And as I wrote, they had a pretty lousy record against those teams remaining, not counting Winnipeg. Because the Wild, for whatever reason, have swept the Jets in all 4 meetings this year, 4-0. So you take those 4 wins away from the Jets, and the Wild record against those teams, starting with Washington through the end of the year, was 3-6-5.
Yikes. And I think the Jets game is going to be interesting because the Jets may not have anything to play for at that point. As it sits, they've got a 4-point lead on Nashville, and with only, will it be the third to last game of the season, they might have the division wrapped up at that point. It could just be seeding, but that could play in the Wild's favor slightly. They might rest a couple of guys. We'll see, but that could play into their favor a little bit, but not obviously not a guarantee.
And I did look at the other, Colorado's and Arizona's remaining schedule, and if you look at the opponents that they had left on their schedule, Colorado had a 6-9-3 record against those teams. Arizona had a 7-7-2 record against those teams. Okay. So there was hope, I guess, that the Wild could, they could still slip in because their opponents haven't given much to go on against teams they have remaining, but the Wild still have a very Herculean type schedule to play against to close out the year. And basically I finished the article saying the only reason they would get in is because Devin Dubnyk turns it on and has an otherworldly performance over the final 8 games, which he's certainly been very good on the road since the end of December, but it's at home where he's ultimately had his struggles, and he's got to put it all together if they want to sniff the playoffs. Right.
And, to that effect, too, there's that game against Arizona, I think, is going to be huge. This season might come down to that, honestly. And I know Colorado's in the mix as well, and you certainly can't act like they're not going to be, anything special. But that game against Carolina, or that game against Arizona, is going to be absolutely massive.
Which is next Sunday, the 31st, which is a 4 p.m. local start.
Ooh, that's not bad.
Sunday afternoon. So do what you will with that. But that's a good weekend for hockey. Friday night against the Golden Knights, and then Sunday afternoon against the Coyotes. I kind of like that, even though I loathe Sunday games altogether. I'm not big on it. Sunday is a day of rest. No church pun intended there, but it's really hard to see the Wild turning this around. Like, it's hard to see them doing anything but like a 500 type schedule against these teams remaining. Yeah. And it's also something that I think is really only attainable to go 500 when, injuries again are racking up. We saw Zach Parise miss Saturday night's game, and Joel Eriksson-Ek is still out. Mm-hmm. And so you are having to keep a guy like Pontus Aberg in the lineup, who is
reviled.
He's making a underdog Cinderella run through the infuriation tournament bracket.
He was.
He's out?
Yeah, he's out now. Yeah.
Did you do polls yesterday?
Yes.
Damn it, I missed that.
Yeah.
And you also have Anthony Bitetto just circling around in his defensive zone. Like, you're playing like NHL 94 and you're just spinning him in a circle. That's what he looked like Saturday night. He actually had a shift where he was just spinning around in his own zone and the puck got taken away from him.
And the worst part of it is that he's pulling Greg Pateryn down with him. And Pateryn is obviously nothing special, I think, but he's at worst a semi-reliable third-line defenseman who is decent defensively. And Bitetto, that pairing, even Bruce talked about it after the game last night, that pairing was brutal. And you got to think that Bitetto is kind of bringing, versus Pateryn, who usually plays with a guy like Sealer, who is a little bit, more responsible at least, and a little bit better than Anthony Bitetto, which isn't a little high bar. But
I just love how Bruce is just sticking with this.
He's
just basically giving Fenton the middle finger and be like, you want to fire me? Go ahead. I'm still collecting a check next year, but here's your lousy player that you decided was a better fit for this roster than Nate Prosser, who I cited on, I think it was Friday night, scored the tying goal for the Iowa Wild, and then followed that tweet up with, well, we get to watch Anthony Bitetto. We might think Nate Prosser is not good in a sense, which is true.
Yeah.
But we have gone further down the totem pole for Anthony Bitetto. There's not good, 50 feet of crap, and then Anthony Bitetto.
And then Kyle Quincy.
Yes.
I think that's what we found out with Nate Prosser, was that when Nate Prosser was gone.
Sorry, we have the bottom of the totem pole, which is not good. Then you have 50 feet of crap. Then you have Anthony Bitetto territory.
Yeah.
And then you have the seventh layer of hell, and then you have Kyle Quincy.
Yes, exactly. And so that's when we found out that... I
forgot about Kyle Quincy.
Yeah, I've been trying to block it out of my mind, too. My therapist has been working wonders with that. We found out with Kyle Quincy that Nate Prosser isn't... You could do worse than Nate Prosser on your third line, is what I'm saying. Like, that, you could do much worse than that. And for some reason, they decided that he wasn't, that Anthony Bitetto was going to be your third line, essentially right-handed defenseman instead of Nate Prosser, who is actually right-handed. It doesn't make any sense. We talked about it, I believe, 2 weeks ago, where is this a thing where Bruce is playing Fenton's guys or what? I don't know. But the Bitetto deployment is just bizarre. Like, why hasn't that guy found his way to the press box yet? I don't understand. Like, he's more welcome in the press box than we are. Why isn't he there?
Zing. I'm putting this out on a Twitter poll right now. Because I think it was, I was talking with Doubles yesterday, and I asked him, I was like, is Bitetto like the most despised defenseman in Wild history? And I couldn't think of any others, and I completely forgot about Kyle Quincy.
And Martin Skula, I think, will hold that title for a long... I mean, that was a guy that got booed when he had the puck in his own arena. Like, that's something that really can't be matched, I think. Like, people hated Martin Skula so much that they booed him in his own arena. But Kyle Quincy is, I mean, my God. I think... He probably won't, and Bitetto may be the same, but Quincy won't get the recognition he deserves as the worst defenseman in Wild history because his era was rather short, because he was so bad. he had to be ousted in 2-3 months or something like that. It was like 3 months.
It was end of November, so
Yeah,
he didn't
so
even
2
make
months.
it.
It was like 2 months, and he was gone. And man, did it feel great when they fired him into the sun.
Yeah, except we're not going to get a similar treatment here because
Apparently not.
Paul Fenn and Anthony Bitetto are BFFs. He calls him Tony.
They're on a casual name basis, huh?
And then you have Pontus Aberg, who just infuriates the hell out of everyone.
Apparently.
Which is, as I found out, a surprise to you. And which
I don't listen to Russo's podcast, so yeah, it was a surprise to me.
I get it. Like, you watch him, and he's kind of maddening. And when I wrote about him when he signed here, like, he's got a lot of skill.
Yeah.
Which, take a flyer on skill.
Right.
Skill guys, but I don't know. You probably have a more accurate point when you kind of get what you get for a fourth liner who just kind of floats around the league.
Well, yeah, he's a third line guy, and you look at his stats right now, and I know this isn't all be all end all, but he's played 20 games here. He has his points per 60 minutes is identical to Kevin Fiala, and it's better than Jordan Greenway. It's better than Joel Eriksson-Ek. It's better than I believe Eric Fair. I tweeted this graphic out yesterday of the Wild's points per 60, and Ryan Donato looks like a god, obviously, but Pontus Aberg is I think he was 14th on the team or something like that. And that doesn't count Nino, who's gone, Coyle, who's gone. I believe Spurgeon was just that. So he's right around that 10th, 11th forward. Okay, well, that's where he plays. What more are you expecting from him? I don't know. I can get not liking him. I don't especially like him. I don't think he's a good hockey player. But the vitriol, I was genuinely shocked by it. It's man, why do so many people loathe this guy? He's anchoring this team back or something.
Nothing Wild fans love more than forwards who back check defensively.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you will be castrated.
Yeah, that's fair.
As a certain former Gopher can attest to.
Right.
You will be tarred and feathered.
If you're not fast.
Right.
And you don't back check.
And when did this culture start? Wild fans were screaming for more offense when Jacques Lemaire stepped away.
Right.
And then we suffered through Todd Richards and then Mike Yeo. And now we get Bruce Boudreau, who's more offensively minded with his teams. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden we are back to back check defensively. You have to be defensive. Okay, well, that's true, but offense is good, people. Let's remember, we wanted offense when, Jock left and, Mike Yeo at the end of his time. I was like, okay, we get it. You just want to suffocate teams in the neutral zone and play to a 2-1 lead all the time.
We essentially survived through 15 years of trap hockey. When you combine the Lemaire and Todd Richards, that wasn't really trap hockey, but it wasn't really. It was supposed to be offensive, but it didn't really work out that way. And then Mike Yeo was a very suffocating system as well, and suffocating offensively to his own players. And so it's just you're screaming at Pontus Aberg because he's not good enough defensively. It's he does have a little bit of offensive upside. Granted, it's not really coming through, and he's also been hurt a little bit. But I don't know. It was just weird to me that nothing that. Again, I'm not an Aberg stan or anything, but still.
I don't know. He finally got scratched the other night.
Sure.
Because I think Bruce kind of was at wit's end with him.
Sure.
But then he had to be slotted back into the lineup right away because Parisi was hurt thanks to Tom Wilson.
What?
Yeah.
That's never happened before.
Go figure.
Such an innocent player.
But yeah, just a nice guy. As Russo noted, Capital Run Arena had a rat problem, which isn't surprising considering Tom Wilson makes his home there.
Right.
So there you go. Yeah, that's kind of what we have for topics wise. Other newsworthy things though from this week, Wild do sign goaltender Mat Robson to a 2-year entry-level contract from the University of Minnesota, 22 years old. This last season with the Gophers had a 278 goals against average, 921 save percentage. In his junior year, and he was pretty good in his time there with the Gophers, and he is going to stay on the Minnesota roster through the end of the year. So they shred through a year of his entry-level contract, and I think what we learned was that was a big reason why he signed here was the Wild were willing to burn a year of his entry-level deal, where you might have seen other teams not. But in his 45 career games at the U of M, 924 save percentage, which is a school record, and a 257 goals against average. Are we
going to see him start at all?
I mean, if the Wild sink and they're out of it with 2-3 games left,
sure.
I mean, he could. I mean, but in a time when you needed wins, no. I think Devin Dubnyk is starting the remainder of
until the games
meaningful games. Yeah. Because he did play the back-to-backs.
So that must have been the crux to sign him then, right? That he gets to basically play along with the team for the last month of the season.
Right, and it also helps a position that you are incredibly thin at organizationally.
True.
You have Capo Kakinen in Iowa, who first year in Iowa, so don't rush a goaltender through quickly.
It was first year in North America in general as well.
So, I mean, you had Andrew Hammond down there backing up, but what?
I think this Robson deal spells the end for Hammond with the Wild franchise. He was just on a 1-year deal, and I don't know if they were trying to catch lightning in the bottle. I was shocked he didn't win the backup job out of camp because I thought he was a better goalie than Stalock, but he hasn't really tore up Iowa all that much either. So I think that probably what they're looking for then is having Kakinen and Robson man the Iowa post next year. I would assume, who knows, how it's going to turn out, but that's kind of what it looks like.
Which, isn't bad. I think that'll be good. You'll probably see Kakinen kind of get starter duties, and Robson kind of gets back up as he kind of eases his way into the roster. But that was a newsworthy thing. And man, that video! Did you see that video that came out when he actually signed the contract? That was so weird.
No, I didn't.
The Wild actually posted a video where he was in Paul Fenn's office signing the contract, and Craig Leopold was there.
Okay.
It was so weird. Like, you usually just see the general manager and the player, and for whatever reason, Craig Leopold decided to insert himself into this video.
The owner decides to come in for basically an AHL goaltender backup signing.
Why?
He's going to show up for the Parisi Suter contracts. Got it. He's going to show up for let's see who else. I don't think he even show up for Eric Stahl's press conference. But you're going to show up for Mat Robson. Okay. All right. Totally makes sense.
If we ever have a grumpy show again, I will. Oh, I'm sorry. Unnamed Bar
Grill in Roseville.
If we have a show there again, you can get me going, and I have some conspiracy theories about
interesting
people higher up in this organization. Gotcha. So
fair.
Take that for whatever.
They also signed. What? Do you have?
I was just gonna say, if you want that show to happen, send
Patreon. We're gonna do Patreon.
Put some tips
for
in
our
the
bar
tip jar.
tab.
Yeah.
So anyway, so they also signed Alex Kolvanov, which is newsworthy.
Yeah,
because they actually have a Russian. They have Sokolov too, but they signed yet another Russian that's not Kirill Kaprizov.
Tuesday, the next day.
Yep.
Kovanov, we highlighted him, I feel like, not long ago.
Yes, 2 weeks ago. I highlighted him in the prospect report.
3-year entry-level deal starting with 2019-20. 74 points in 64 games with the Moncton Wildcats this season. Led the team in power play assists. Second in game-winning goals with 7. Native of Saratov, Russia. As you noted, the Wild get a Russian there into their system. Third round pick, 86 overall in the 2018 entry draft, which, as we remember, the 2018 entry draft after round 1 was we were actually pretty pleased with the draft results, as a lot of shoot your shot kind of picks, with the Wild.
And he was one of them.
Yeah.
Also, I don't know if we covered this last week, but a guy that I have. Well, we'll get to it. We'll do that. We'll do him the prospect report. How's that sound?
All right, that sounds wonderful. I don't know, just kind of looking here at something else I thought about. I'll bring this up. Eric Stahl scored Saturday night against the Hurricanes, had the lone goal for Minnesota. That was his 21st of the season, and he has 50 points here in 75 games, which, considering he's 34 years old, that's pretty good for this day and age in the
Solid,
NHL.
yeah.
But most people seemingly will tell you that he's had a down year, which I don't know. He had 65 points his first year, then the 76 points, including 42 goals last season, which I think maybe set the bar a little too high for expectations this year.
Yeah.
But ultimately, do you believe he has had a good year? Has it been just an average year? Has it been a bad year?
I think it's fair to say that his year is slightly disappointing, or that it's slightly down. I mean, yeah, the 42 goals, that wasn't going to happen again. But, unless he scores a couple of times, you're looking at literally half as many goals as last season. So I think it's fair to say he's had a disappointing season. I think he would agree with that. And I think, the storyline going into the trade deadline, or after he signed the extension at least, was that he had a lot of anxiety about, being traded and leaving, because he definitely wanted to stay. And so, now maybe it doesn't seem like the weight has been lifted a whole lot. It's not like he's gone on a tear or anything, but he has scored a handful of goals since the deadline. So maybe there's some truth to that. I know he had quite the drought in the middle of the season there. But I don't know. I think it's fair to say he's had a slightly down season. I don't think that you need to crucify the guy. I mean, 50 points is still pretty solid, and he's played fairly well. But I think a little disappointing is fair.
Yeah, I would. That's probably kind of how I would clarify that as, not good, but and something you just don't see is, you just don't see the guy on breakaways like he was in the last 2 years. And, I don't know if teams are just kind of more defensively minded that he's out there. I don't know if there's been kind of a shift in strategy for how teams play the Wild, if, now Eric Stahl has become kind of more of a focal point. But you don't see him getting on the breakaways like he once was, and you just don't see him burying some shots that this year that he otherwise, was last year. And, you look just kind of looking like he's not shooting significantly less this year comparative to last year. Like last year, per Hockey Reference, he was averaging 2.94 shots per game, and this year he's down to 2.73. So it's not a catastrophic
What's the shooting percentage now?
difference. And the shooting percentage is 17.4 last year and 10.2 this year.
Yeah, there's the difference.
So there's, And again, when you shoot 17.4%, you're going to have a little bit of regression going into the next year. Because his average on his career is 11.2, which, pretty close to what he's doing this year. But
Sure.
It probably would have been a little bit higher, but his last couple of years in Carolina were bad.
Yeah.
So he kind of boosted it up the last couple of years here with
I think when
Minnesota,
he's
but
right, you probably see him around a 12%, 13% clip, which is pretty decent in the world of hockey. So this year is maybe a little bit of a down year for him, but last year, it was definitely probably unsustainable for more than one season.
And and he'll be here for the next 2 years. So you got that nice contract extension.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. I don't know. Key for the Wild this week is they got to find a way to win at home, as I also highlighted that on last Monday, that the Wild are absolutely abysmal at home. I think we kind of hit on that last week, but.
So I brought this up to you talking about the schedule. They have 6 games left. How many do they need to win to get in the playoffs? Is it 5? Is it 4 as long as they beat the Coyotes? I think that's kind of about where I am. Is
right.
They need to win 4, including the Coyotes, or 5. And anything less than that, they have no chance.
I think it has to be 5, and I say that because
That's fair.
Colorado and Arizona have a game in hand.
Sure.
So, depending on the results of those, it could go a different way, but you have to go with 5. Like Arizona plays, later this afternoon on Sunday. So does Colorado. They play this evening. But
So
I think
based
you
on how
gotta
those
win at
games
least
go.
right. I think you got to win at least 5. And if games really go the wrong way today, like say both Colorado and Arizona win, then I say you got to win all 6.
Yeah. I think even if they both win today, it's 5 and they've got a chance. But yeah, I'm kind of with you at, when you think about it, they lose, they have 1 game margin for error essentially.
Yeah,
And so if they lose that second game, I mean, that's basically all but mathematically eliminating them.
if Arizona and Colorado wins, later this afternoon, and you're finding yourself 3 points down with 6 games to play, that's a lot of ground to make up in this day and age, considering the loser point as we saw on Saturday with Arizona and New Jersey. Like that was a huge point for Arizona.
Yep.
And I just don't see it. I think the loss to Colorado was kind of it. Like, I figured the Wild could maybe squeak out a win in the back-to-back against Washington and Carolina, but I didn't envision them winning both. So they really needed that win against Colorado, and they just came up completely short.
Oh,
So
that was a terrible.
woo!
Yeah.
Draft lottery, here we come. All right, that can do it for our regular topics. Now on to the Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week.
Hi, this is Bruce Boudreau. I don't see how in Toronto that they're calling it, unless it's a guy they just pulled in off the street that hasn't seen hockey before. If I were the fans, I'd be booing even more because that, they pay good money for this.
If you want it, don't just think you want it. Go out and f***ing want it.
Bruce Boudreau Quote of the Week. It is a good one. We recognized it instantly when it made its way into the Twitter world. But this came from the head coach on Friday during their morning skate against the Capitals. Bruce Boudreau referred to Michael Bublé as Michael Bubbles.
God bless Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah.
It's just so fantastic.
We're not going to have many more of these segments.
Oh, come on now, Giles. Come on.
Which is sad. Think about it. Like
Negative
we got
Nancy.
a couple of weeks left of regular season podcasts, and if that's it for Bruce, then that's it.
Sad.
But yeah, that was your great Bruce Boudreau nugget from the week. So there it is, and we can move on to our Kirill Watch.
Kaprizov across for Gusev. Kaprizov shoots. He scores! He scores! The Russians are golden in South Korea.
Kirill Kaprizov, the star wild prospect, the prized wild prospect, is in the Gagarin Cup playoffs with CSKA Moscow. His playoff stats in 8 games, 2 goals, 6 assists for 8 points, so averaging a nice point per game as I try to look up how they are actually doing. So last I checked, I think they were even 1-1. But I'm not sure where they are at. It's not an easy thing to find.
You don't want to get your computer flagged for...
Right.
You don't want to access too many Russian websites.
Right. I don't want to be part of the Mueller report. Oh, wait. That's done. Never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. The conference finals are set.
Oh.
CSKA Moscow did advance to the next round. They won their series 4-1 against Dynamo. So
Nice.
Kaprizov sat out a game.
That CSKA Moscow did that. They'll bench random guys because they're so stacked.
Big showdown in the conference final now. That begins on, I believe that is, Thursday the 28th, between CSKA and, was that CKA or CSA? It basically
St. Petersburg team.
St. Petersburg. It's a team that had Kovalchuk, and then it has Pavel Datsyuk on it. So that's kind of the other, star.
It's like Putin's team versus Putin's other team.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the Putin Cup. Let's just call it for what it is. SKA St. Petersburg. That is the team, including Pavel Datsyuk. I'm just looking to see what other stud players are on this roster. We've got Nikita Gusev, 82 points in the regular season for them. Nail Yakupov.
What?
You remember him? He's on this team.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Good
this
for him.
is a fun trip down memory lane. Defenseman David Rundblad. I think
Wow.
with like the Penguins at one point.
Yeah.
I think he was
a warm
Carolina.
Body. Yep. Was he with the Blackhawks?
Blackhawks. That's right. I was way off. Yeah. Don't quote me on any of this. But yeah, that's
wow.
That's their stack team. So that'll be a good matchup if you want to try and watch that at some point. But is there another prospect we want to highlight this week?
Sure. There's one that I don't know if you have the date on this, but the Wild signed another prospect to his entry-level deal, which doesn't necessarily mean he'll be playing in Iowa next year, but it's just, we've seen, I believe it was Joel Eriksson Ek signed his deal right away and then went back to Sweden to play for a couple of years. But anyway, Ivan Ladnia signed a contract with the Minnesota Wild, I believe in the last 2 weeks. Might not have been this week, but maybe the week before. But anyway, he had a great year in the OHL with the Niagara Ice Dogs, 45 points in 41 games. He did have an ATO with the Iowa Wild last season after the OHL season was over. Played 6 games, no points in the AHL. But he did sign an actual contract, so it'll be interesting to see if he joins the Iowa Wild or maybe even joins the ECHL team. I would think he'd probably join the Iowa Wild. He was a guy, third round pick in 2017. Their first overall pick of that draft. So someone to get, mildly excited about. We'll see what he can do. He could be, he's got a reputation as a dangler. So we'll see what he can do.
Yeah. I'm not sure where that signing is. I'm not seeing it, but
it was in the last 2 weeks. I don't recall exactly what day it was though.
Okay.
I believe it was sometime last week.
All right.
But he is signed. So.
All right. That is your Kirill Prospect Watch for the week. Now we move on over to Central Intelligence.
Central Intelligence.
Yeah, I've been scoreboard watching since opening night. So I don't know if that counts or anything, but I think hockey players are hockey players, and they want to see where they are, and they know how close everything is. They know that every game is vital.
Central Division, again, just really no change. Actually, I apologize. There is a change, but Winnipeg still winning the division. They clinched a playoff spot Saturday evening. They demolished the Predators 5-0. Woof. But they have locked up a playoff spot with that win, and they, with a game in hand over the Predators, are moving closer to clinching the Central Division outright. 94 points for Winnipeg, 90 for Nashville. The St. Louis Blues, with a game in hand on the Nashville Predators, are at 88 points. 2 behind the Predators with 90 points. Don't rule out the Blues.
Yeah. Well, I think either way it goes, they're going to end up playing each other in the first round. So
the Blues had a big win over the Lightning, 4-3 on Saturday night. Good for them. I can't believe this is a thing.
I did see that Dallas has come back down a little bit. We'll see where they end up, but they could be a team that maybe even slides to the second wild card, depending on how things go for the Avs.
Nashville not having home ice advantage in the first round would just be a complete mind.
Yeah, it'd be a little
wrecked.
Crazy,
but it could happen
for sure.
And the Blues are just winning and racking up points when they lose, so it's we'll see what happens. Dallas 82 points in the top wild card spot in the West. Colorado with 80 points, the second wild card spot in the West. Then, as we mentioned, Arizona 79, Minnesota 79. I'm sorry, Arizona and Minnesota are tied.
Yeah,
I think I misfired earlier and I said Arizona was up a point, but whatever. You get the picture.
Right.
Then Chicago 74 points. They've lost 2 in a row, and I think these last 2 losses for them especially the loss last night to Colorado was kind of killer for them and their brief playoff hopes. So there you go. That is the Central Division, which
it's shaking out now. I mean, there's only a handful of ways it can stack up now, so we'll see how it goes.
And then last but not least, certainly we move to jerseys.
Here to start the third period. What team is this? It's not Team USA. Well, yes, it is. They've got on new uniforms. They're wearing the logo of the Duck. I've never seen this before.
So last week on the show, we did our top 10 current NHL jerseys. And this week, we get our top 10 current worst NHL jerseys. And we each submitted a list, and then you crunch the numbers 1 through 10.
Yep.
And you now have a combined list 1 through 10. So starting at number 10, moving on up, what do we have?
Well, similar to last week, I'm going to throw out 3 honorable mentions because, funny enough, both of us make a list independent of each other and only end up with 3 teams not in common. Basically not in common. So we have the New York Islanders third jersey, which you submitted. I
don't think it was high on my list.
No, it was low. But yeah, not a great jersey. I put in the Columbus Blue Jackets blue jersey. I think there's a lot of blue going on there, and I'm not a fan of the logo.
That was one I tossed on, but it didn't make my cut.
Sure. And then one that I also didn't like is the LA Kings third jersey.
That was also kind of in my fringe area.
Silver or gray. I don't know.
At least they got rid of the gold that they had in their 50th year and the trim on that jersey.
Fair. So we'll start number 10 here, the 10th worst jersey. So the Calgary Flames home jersey, the red Flames jersey with the black C, which doesn't look particularly great. And even worse, I think, is the blue flag of Alberta on the shoulder, which makes even less sense. So it'd be like the Wild putting the blue Minnesota flag on the shoulder of their jerseys. It's like, why
are you doing that?
Is that there? Especially because I think I brought this up last time. They're not the only team in Alberta. You've got another team in Alberta that actually is blue. Well, sort of. We'll get to that. Anyway, so 9th on the list, I had the Florida Panthers.
Florida HC.
Yeah, the Florida HC jerseys.
I also tossed on them. But they were, again, fringe.
Right. And so I didn't like their redesign at all. And I know you're not a fan either. And they look so soccery and not in a particularly good way. It just looks like they were trying very hard to come up with something unique, I guess, and it didn't work. Let's see, number 8 overall, I also had the Vancouver Canucks jerseys. The white jerseys, they put Vancouver on the jersey, like we don't know where the team is from. I've never been a big fan of the Flying Shamu jerseys. I just don't. I think the flying skate is obviously something that they brought back for a very part-time basis this year, but something that they should use a lot more. We'll see what happens with that with Seattle coming into the league. I would like to see them follow my plan and give up those colors to Seattle, but that's just me. Anyway, 7th worst on the list, Edmonton Oilers home jerseys. The grossly gross orange jerseys that don't belong. I get it. Like, I've heard that team started with orange jerseys, so maybe they're acting like it's some kind of nostalgia play, but I don't think that's the case. I just usually when teams come out with new jerseys, I'm all for it because I think that companies rebrand all the time. My company just rebranded, cost them a ton of money, but companies rebrand and it's not necessarily a money grab. It wasn't a money grab for my company to rebrand. In the NHL, sometimes when they rebrand, it's a money grab, and I think that's what this was with the orange jerseys with them. It was to sell a butt pile more of Connor McDavid jerseys when they look much better wearing royal blue, and I think that's pretty fair to say.
Right.
Number 6 on the list, something we both had kind of middle range on our lists, was the Carolina Hurricanes third jersey. I don't know what it is about it that bothers you, but I really don't like the gray shoulders and the ghosted logo. I just think it's kind of silly.
Remember, I almost forgot about it.
Yeah, you did.
I had to revise my list.
You had to double back and add it in.
Put it on there. Yeah, the gray shoulders is bad, and I'm not. I don't know. I get what they're trying to do with the crest, with the hockey stick and the hurricane flags. It's too big. Like
it's
I
too
don't
tall.
Know. It's just kind of weird, and I don't know. It just can do without it.
Yeah,
and I don't like the double set of pipes on there's stripes on the sleeves, and they're not the same size either. So it just, I don't know.
There's a lot of things to not
and
like.
there's piping, shoulder pipes
Everywhere.
My
Piping.
God.
All right, so into the top 5 here. I think we've got a pretty solid top 5. Number 5, the Arizona Coyotes, regular jerseys, obviously. Not the Kachina Coyote, which did make the top 10 list for both of us last week. They've never been, ever since they rebranded and became the Arizona Coyotes, it's never really looked all that good. And, when they added the black sleeves to the jerseys a couple years ago, it was a whole lot of nothing. It was like, okay, well, that looks just as dumb as it did before. Why'd you bother with that? Yeah, exactly. No kidding. The Kachina Coyote, that's what the black sleeves were for. But then they brought him back. He arose after 3 days. Number 4 on the list, and I think this is one that maybe should be higher, but it's I don't know. It's pretty bad. The Tampa Bay Lightning third jersey, the gradient sleeves on the third jersey, which is just like, when this got leaked and everyone just panned the holy hell out of it, how did they go forward with wearing these jerseys? Like, I don't get it. I don't understand.
Since they mainly went to blue,
Yeah.
they have tried black uniforms twice, and both times they have been just disasters.
Yeah, the Bolts jerseys.
You have such a good, crisp, clean look with your home and your roads, and then you just completely whiff on alternates. It's just like, you don't have to think this outside of the box to come up with something good for a third.
Right.
And we discussed previously in this segment, gradient just never works.
No, don't do gradient colors on jerseys, please.
So,
for the love of God. All right, and we're going to move into the full-on dumpster fire here. Speaking of dumpster fires, the Ottawa Senators coming at number 3 for us. I think that's a fair to say. Majorly disappointing with the Adidas rollout that they were not redesigned at all. They did slightly tweak their striping, but it was too little too late. And that logo is just, it's become so dated and just not, not they need to go back to the old logo, but they need a rebrand, and it's probably not going to happen until Eugene Melnyk sells the team, which I think a lot of Senators fans would be begging for at this point.
No, they are.
So I don't know. I think that team needs a fresh start, and a new owner and new jerseys would be wonderful for them. Number 2, number 1 on my list, the Nashville Predators. So much
the home jersey.
Fucking yellow. Good God, please stop. I also hate the road jerseys too, for what it's worth.
I only threw in their home jersey.
I think that, we kind of talked about splitting it up between home and road, but we end up kind of not doing that. Nashville home and road might be number 1 and number 2 for me, because it just enough with the yellow already. My God, I'm so tired of it. But I think number 1 is deserving. It was number 1 on your list, and it was, I think, top 3 on my list. The Anaheim Ducks, and that abysmal
Stay
looking,
true to your brand.
Yeah, abysmal looking foot logo. I don't understand why you want feet on a jersey. That's just never been. I mean, the only time it was moderately okay was the Avalanche shoulder patch, but otherwise it's just some kind of weird foul fetish. I don't understand. And so, yeah, those jerseys are awful. And that's another team that needs a redesign like no one's business. They kind of did a service to some folks and brought back the Mighty Ducks logo for a third jersey this year.
And the rumor is, well, this is for sure thing. The Mighty Ducks thirds this year are one and dones.
Yep.
They will be discontinued at the end of this year. And next year they are going to what's rumored to be an orange alternate. I think it's Aesthetics has
What was that, Charles?
Damn it. Aesthetics has, I think they were the ones that had it rumored that they are going to go with an orange third next year, kind of similar to like their Stadium Series from a few years ago. So,
well, they had third jerseys a few years ago that
yeah,
were Mighty Ducks orange jerseys, which didn't look all that good.
I can't imagine that they're going to continue with the Mighty Ducks. I think they've kind of given folks, myself included, a good run with it, at least this year.
Yeah.
As I've said before, they've killed it with their 25th anniversary season, bringing back all the old jerseys, retiring players that should have been retired long ago. But yeah, I will never get behind the webbed foot.
No.
And I don't know if you're going to continue on with it, just go back to like your Stanley Cup winning jerseys of 06, 07 with the Ducks.
Where it says Ducks.
Just go with that. It's got less orange, which it's a little more pleasing to the eye. So, but they won't because we don't get what we want. So, whatever.
I just don't understand where they were thinking like, you know what's a good color scheme? Black, bronze, and orange. Okay, what? Why did you do that?
I guess I can see like they want to get away from the Mighty Ducks aspect, but I also don't. So like I can and I can.
Yeah, you're a professional sports team. Let's get away from something that sold a gajillion jerseys and shirts and hats and hoodies and
I think it was also
understand.
part of the NHL 100. Like Palmer, they did like top jerseys, and I think that came in high up that list. Like
right.
It was up there.
Just from a sheer marketing standpoint, like the Anaheim Mighty Ducks stuff had to have sold like gangbusters.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just kids like you and I that had that stuff. That was a nationwide deal. That was a very big brand. And they had to have dropped from, probably top 5 in merch sales to easily bottom 5 in merch sales. Because who wants to own that crappy redesigned logo that they went with?
No. Nope, you don't. I'm trying to find it, but I can't. And I knew it was in the top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to say it was like, I know like the Blackhawks, like I'm pretty sure they were the number 1 like sweater
Fair.
of all time. But yeah, so that can do it. We can wrap it up.
Sure.
After that, thank you to listening to this otherwise fine production. Do give us a follow on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell. You can find the podcast Twitter account at GATG Wild Podcast. I did find it. It was number 3. NHL.com's top 25 uniforms of all time. 1 Blackhawks, 2 Hartford Whalers, 3 Mighty Ducks.
Wow. That's
4 Nordiques, 5 North Stars.
Wow.
Of 78 to 81.
Nice.
There you go. So anyway, you can find Ben and I writing at zonecoverage.com, at zonecoveragemn on Twitter. You can find this otherwise fine podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Spotify, all those fun platforms you can think of. If you do listen on iTunes, drop us a rating if you are so inclined. Good or bad, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
If it's bad, we ridicule you on
We're
here.
at least entertained by it if it's bad.
Right. That's why I always call it otherwise fine podcast.
Yes.
So yeah, that will do it for us this week. Thank you again for listening, and we will chat with you again next week.
Later.